Well, gang, it didn't take long for the media's narrative on Ukraine to completely unravel. Henry Kissinger dropped a bombshell at Davos telling Zelensky's faithful that he needs to sign a peace deal and accept the loss of eastern Ukraine to Russia. We're going to take a look at what Kissinger had to say. We're going to compare it with what's really happening in Ukraine. And stick with the very end of this video when we're going to see how scholars predicted exactly what's unfolding right before our very eyes and where we need to go from here. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve with you. Great to be with you. As always, I'm your daily fake news antidote, so come on into your Patriot Professor's Den. We're happy to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. If you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Before we begin, if you have an IRA, 401k, or a savings account, you are going to love getting to know a Patriot group that has become good friends to this channel as we're watching a retirement savings squandered with bumbling Biden's record inflation or reckless spending. Our amazing friends over at Goldco are here to help you find out how you can protect your retirement with the trustworthiness of gold and silver. And just to show you how amazing these guys are, click on that link below right now, and they're going to give you, I kid you not, they're going to give you up to $10,000 in free silver when you open up an account. You heard that right, $10,000 in free silver. But this is a limited time offer, so do not wait. Click on that link below or go to turleytalkslikesgold.com and find out how awesome Goldco really is. You will not be disappointed. All right, let's dive right in here. Henry Kissinger is upsetting the blue checks on Twitter. That's right. He's causing the neolibs and neocons alike to blow a collective gasket. Zelensky's devoted fan base are up in arms over Kissinger basically telling Zelensky to take what's left of Ukraine and be happy with it. That's right. Henry Kissinger, the 98-year-old statesman, 98, my heavens. He, of course, was a former Secretary of State under Richard Nixon, and a very controversial one at that, to say the least. I'm not particularly a fan of Kissinger, to put it mildly. However, when it comes to the situation in Ukraine, he seems to have a lot more sense than the collective hysteria that has thus far infested our permanent political class, including many Republicans. Kissinger was at the World Economic Forum today via simulcast, and he shocked the dolts in Davos when he said in no uncertain terms that Ukraine needs to come to terms with the fact that it's not ever going to get back the territory that Russia has taken. They need to accept that and make peace with Russia while ceding the territory that they have lost. It was an astonishing prescription, one radically at odds with the nonsense that we've been subjected to for the last 3 months that's been promising. Just like Rachel Maddow with the fake Russian dossier and the Mueller investigations, right? They've been promising us the bombshell any minute, right? Russia's going to collapse. Russia's going to run out of missiles. Their military is going to pull out in humiliating defeat. Putin's inner circle is going to rise up and take him out. Putin's going to die of cancer, on and on and on and on. That's all we've been hearing for literally 90 days straight, and what have we been saying on this channel by contrast during that same time period? What have we been saying? Russia's winning, all right? For right or for wrong, that frankly has got nothing to do with the facts on the ground. For good or ill, right or wrong, Russia is slowly and methodically crushing the Ukrainian armed forces, most particularly the Azov battalion in the city of Mariupol. Russia has been methodically applying what's called the cauldron on Ukrainian forces, and like a boa constrictor which crushes its prey slowly but surely, the Russian allied forces, together with the Donetsk and Lugansk and Chechen forces, have been squeezing the Ukrainian resistance, depleting them of food, water, fuel, all the while bombarding them and pummeling them with artillery until either they just give up and surrender. Note, surrender, not evacuate. Surrender. Either they surrender or they succumb. I mean, those are the only two options. Now, it's not shock and awe. I mean, it's not flashy and sexy, as it were. It doesn't make for great videos and television like American warfare does. Instead, what Russia has been giving us is a masterclass of good old-fashioned Clausewitzian military strategy, named after the famed Prussian general Klaus von Clausewitz. And this is a slow, patient wearing down of your opponent's military until it basically collapses and collapses permanently. I mean, that's the strategy. Now, again, it's not like shock and awe where the opposing military runs away, regroups, and, say like the mountains of Afghanistan, only to return a few years later and pick up right where they left off. Hello, Taliban, right? And so, of course, because of the fall of Mariupol, as well as the takeover of other key cities like Kherson and Popasnaya, Russian allied forces now have full control of more than 80% of Ukraine's Black Sea coastline, which, as the BBC describes it, will effectively cut off Ukraine from its maritime trade and further isolate it from the world. So, Russia now has taken over a massive portion of eastern Ukraine, and Kissinger today basically admitted they're not going to leave. You can kiss that part of Ukraine goodbye. But he also noted any attempt to escalate this conflict the way the neocons and neolibs want, to push Russia out of these territories, would no longer be about the freedom of Ukraine. It would now be a new war against Russia itself, and that changes everything. Now that becomes officially World War III. And so Kissinger said today, look, there's no way around this. No, the Russian military is not retreating. No, they're not licking their wounds in humiliation. No, Putin's inner circle is not going to take him out. Sorry, Lindsey Graham. Sorry, Sean Insanity. No, Putin isn't dying. The Russians aren't going anywhere. And any attempt to escalate this conflict based on a bunch of lies and fairy tales that we keep telling ourselves is only going to end up starting a new war against Russia, the outbreak of which would be World War III. So in short, Zelensky needs to take the deal. He needs to accept a smaller Ukraine as the new status quo. He needs to go neutral, become a neutral buffer state between Russia and Europe. And we need to see what we can do to try to restore some semblance of an international order with a bigger Russia and a smaller Ukraine, which is exactly what we've been arguing for on this channel for months now. Now, I thought that one of the more interesting moments of this interview at Davos was when Kissinger reminded everyone that he predicted that NATO expansion eastward, particularly into Ukraine, would indeed lead to war. And he was hardly the only one. John Mearsheimer of University of Chicago, George Kennan of Harvard, who was actually the architect of containment, they all believe that NATO eastward expansion, most particularly into the area of Ukraine, would end up starting a hot war with Russia. Here's Mearsheimer summarizing his argument for precisely that.
But I actually think that what's going on here is that the West is leading Ukraine down the primrose path. And the end result is that Ukraine is going to get wrecked. And I believe that the policy that I'm advocating, which is neutralizing Ukraine and then building it up economically and getting it out of the competition between Russia on one side and NATO on the other side, is the best thing that could happen to the Ukrainians. What we're doing is encouraging the Ukrainians to play tough with the Russians. We're encouraging the Ukrainians to think that they will ultimately become part of the West, because we will ultimately defeat Putin and we will ultimately get our way. Time is on our side. And of course, the Ukrainians are playing along with this. And the Ukrainians are almost completely unwilling to compromise with the Russians and instead want to pursue a hardline policy. Well, as I said to you before, if they do that, the end result is that their country is going to be wrecked. And what we're doing is, in effect, encouraging that outcome. I think it would make much more sense for us to work to create a neutral Ukraine. It would be in our interest to bury this crisis as quickly as possible. It certainly would be in Russia's interest to do so. And most importantly, it would be in Ukraine's interest to put an end to the crisis. Thank you.
Now, what Mearsheimer is getting at here is that Ukraine is, in point of fact, something that scholars call a cleft country. Cleft countries are countries that actually have overlapping civilizations within their borders, such that each civilization has equally legitimate claims over the respective territories. The big cleft country that exploded, of course, in the 1990s was Yugoslavia, with the intermix of an Eastern Orthodox civilization, Roman Catholic civilization, Islamic civilization, right? That's a cleft country. They're divided by history, ethnicity, region, religion. And scholars like Sam Huntington of Harvard, who of course is the one who coined the Clash of Civilizations thesis, he was very hesitant for any other nation to get involved in the politics of cleft countries because they're powder kegs, right? The disunity and strife inherent in the competing civilizational identities of the nation always have the potential to blow up. And can you guess what is perhaps the major cleft country these scholars were most worried about in terms of blowing up? Can you say Ukraine? Well, and here's the key. Huntington believed that globalism would only exacerbate the strife in a cleft country by superimposing what is, in effect, another civilization on an already contested area. And that civilization, of course, being globalism, with all of its woke liberal values and the like. And that is exactly what I've been arguing on this channel, on how NATO and woke Western leaders provoked this war in Ukraine by imposing Western values on an already highly contested region. They basically ignited the powder keg. Now, you're not going to hear that on Fox. You're not going to hear that from Sean Insanity. I mean, the geopolitical ignorance of these people is astonishing. Now, here's how Huntington sees the new civilizational global order working itself out. He believed that inevitably smaller countries would naturally recalibrate themselves around the larger dominant civilization in what he called civilizational blocks. So Sinic countries would coalesce around China. Orthodox countries would coalesce around Russia. Western countries would coalesce around the United States. And these central large civilizational states would function in terms of what Huntington called core states. And they were the ones who were ultimately going to have to manage cleft countries, in that they're going to have to diplomatically mitigate between the equally legitimate but competing civilizational claims in those regions. And in fairness, that's exactly what the Minsk agreement that was brokered by Russia attempted to do before they were outright rejected by Ukraine. In effect, well, they were in effect rejected, right? Now, the counterpoint to this is any attempt by any one of those core states to try to humiliate and defeat another core state, another civilization state, will almost inevitably end up in another war. So it's absolutely vital that the various core states work together to bring about peace in an already explosive region. That, I believe, is what Kissinger is calling on the adults in Davos to do. And we'll see if they heed his call. All I can say is that they better, for the sake of what's left of Ukraine and what currently remains of our world. Now, before you go, you will definitely want to check out my latest video I just uploaded on exposing the real Great Reset of the World Economic Forum in Davos. It's not what you think, and you're not going to want to miss it. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.